The leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. And again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Wow. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started.
Welcome to Coopertalk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I have to tell you something, people. I'm very confident in my appearance. As you get older, you do that, because I noticed something today. I got a shirt. I wore a shirt that has shirt dimples. Now, I don't know if you know what shirt dimples are, but basically, I think that's what they're called. It's when you hang your T-shirt up, and I do hang my nicer ones up, and you don't wear it for a while. I think I wore this one like 3 months ago, and you get those little like ripples or dimples above your shoulders. And when I was younger, I'd always freak out. I put it on, I'd have to change it, because if you try to iron them, you're screwed, because your whole shirt's nice except that little area, and if you take out the iron, it happens to be in the worst part of the shirt you can iron. So you're trying to sit there and pull it over the ironing board, but then you always sit there and when it's a T-shirt, you pull it over, and then you iron something, and then you get like a wrinkle in the back, and then your whole shirt is screwed. So I went out today, and it's funny because Joanne didn't say anything. She usually says, you look homeless when I go out if I'm dressed or if I'm dressed like a bum. But I went out today with the shirt dimples, and I'll probably stop at the market on the way home, and I don't care. Anyway, so that's the thing about getting older. It's great. Anyway, we have a great guest today. Very funny comic, talented actor, and it's funny. She's young, but she's been working since she was like 8 or 9 or 10. We'll talk about that. Her name is Erica Rhodes. How you doing, Erica?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Now, did you ever do this? Do you notice the shirt dimples? I mean,
I totally don't notice things like that, like unless you really point them out. And I don't even own an iron. I'm so embarrassed to admit that. But I blow dry my clothes.
I got to figure this, because it's probably easier, because if it wasn't for my girlfriend, I wouldn't own a blow dryer. But how do you? I mean, because I would rather do that, because ironing, you have to take the board down, you got to take it out. What do you do? You just blow dry it?
I mean, I put the shirt on. If it's wrinkly, while I'm blow drying my hair, I'll just also blow dry the shirt. So I'll just take the blow dryer and be like, this'll do. Or the other trick is that if you take a hot shower and then you get out of the shower, then you can put the shirt in the shower sort of for a second to get the steam, and then it's like you're steaming it. But this is all really kind of pathetic.
No, it's true though, because when I used to do comedy on the road, you would do that, because you would sit there and you travel and you think it's going to come, your shirt is going to come out nice, and you put it in your suitcase. I know you probably go on the road, and you sit there and you get out, and the same thing, you leave it when you take it in the shower. When you take it, you just leave it in the bathroom, and you go, okay,
yeah, it's like this'll do, yeah. Or just don't buy shirts that get wrinkly.
Exactly. So now you grew up in Massachusetts.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when did you know you wanted to act and get into comedy? Were you a little kid? I know you were doing Prairie Home, the show, when you were like 10, I believe.
Yeah.
But how did you? I mean, what turned you on to this acting? And 10, such a young age. Well, for me, I think it's young age to act, but to get on stage, it's completely different, because acting, you go into a room, this year on stage. Were you like 5 and you wanted to act, or how did this happen?
Yeah, well, actually, I started when I was about 5, because my mom's a violinist, a professional violinist. She plays in the Boston Pops. And I guess a lot of her friends were saying, your daughter is so like cute. And, like I had these little blonde ringlets, and I looked kind of like a young Drew Barrymore when I was a kid. And they were like, you should get her into acting. So she kept hearing this over and over. And so then she actually got me an agent when I was 5. My first job ever was modeling a waterbed.
Okay. First of all, just the thought of having a 5-year-old on the waterbed is just bad advertising. But what I mean, no, I mean, it's like because you think, but whenever now at least you think the waterbed like, hey ladies, come back to my waterbed, and
Oh, really? I thought it was a kid thing.
no waterbeds. If you see, that's like the old. Well, that's like the old. If you see the movies, it's like if they make fun of the guy with like the chest hair and the medallions, and he brings his woman back, and he's like, hey, the waterbed. So I mean, it was a different waterbed, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But now, how did you? Were you nervous when you were getting a commercial? Because you.
Oh no, I was. I mean, well, this was a print ad actually. This was just print. So all I had to do was lie there for like a few hours in a waterbed with stuffed animal, and they took pictures of me, and it's like, oh, I was hooked. I was like, oh, this is show business. Well, I'm in it for the long haul. Little did I know what that meant. But then, as I got a little older, I did more commercials. I did like an anti-smoking ad at one point. I did an like don't talk to strangers ad where I'm sitting on a swing, and it was like a local commercial, to bring awareness to kids, don't talk to strangers and things like that. And then I did a few short films, and so I was doing a bunch of stuff before I did Prairie Home Companion.
Now, were you auditioning for these, or did people know you and said, okay, we saw her in this print ad? Because, I mean, it must be crazy if you're auditioning at that age, because there's so many kids who are your age. And luckily for you, your mom was a violinist, so she had talent. She knew how to deal with that. But there's probably a lot of bratty kids running around that, it's just weird for the auditions. Were you going to big auditions when you got this stuff?
Yeah, well, I don't really remember. It was all kind of a blur because my passion as a kid was actually ballet. Like ballet was my, what I just wanted to do. I wanted to be a dancer my whole life, and that was kind of my passion. So the acting thing to me was kind of like a chore that I wasn't that into, So I would go to these auditions, and I remember my mom being like, "Can I please put a little lipstick on you?" I'd be like, "No, like no makeup." I hated makeup. I just I never really bought into the whole thing, but I kind of just did it because my mom was having me do it. She wasn't like a typical stage mom, but she was a little bit, like she was the one kind of pushing it at first.
Well, I could see why also, because it's something that, I think a lot of times stage moms will just take their kids, even if the kids shouldn't be auditioning, like Honey Boo Boo, even though she became huge. But for you, people were saying to your mom, and your mom knew people who were creative. So it's not like some guy going, hey, yeah, your daughter's going to be in it. It's like for you. So I think she probably pushed you because she knew you'd do well at it.
Yeah, I think maybe she saw something at first. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so I think that in the beginning it was a little bit inspired by her, and then I sort of like later in life it became more my thing. But it took me a while to sort of find it in my own way. Like I remember, I think one of my biggest auditions I auditioned for The Little Princess.
Okay.
Which the remake of The Little Princess was originally, I think, played by Shirley Temple or something. I think so. And so they did a remake of it. I auditioned to play The Little Princess. And I remember my mom coaching me on it. And she kind of coached me to overact. Like, I think I was, like, on the right track. Like, I was really natural at that time, like, really, like. And I remember her coaching me, like, no, do a little more of this, a little more of that, to the point of, like, I think I was, like, definitely overacting for my audition. And then I did a bunch of like musicals and stuff like that. I did a operetta when I was about 12 called Amal and the Night Visitors, and I was also kind of a reluctant star in that. Like I was the lead in it, and I was like, oh, this is low budget. Like my mom told me that I was like asking how much they were charging for tickets, and I was like, that's too low. So I was kind of a snob too. Like everything was, nothing was quite good enough. I also refused to audition for a show called Zoom, which was a popular.
Everyone knows Zoom. We're going to Zoom. Everyone,
you know that? Oh
yeah,
man,
that's been around forever.
I refused.
Get out of the studio.
Yeah.
Why did you refuse Zoom?
Mom,
it's legendary. It's like Sesame Street and Zoom.
Yeah, it crushed my mom because she's like, honey, I was like, I will not be on that show. I was a snob. I was like, I'm not doing. That's beneath me.
God, you wouldn't do Zoom. I'm disgusted.
I mean, if I had listened to my mom, I probably would have been like huge when I was by the time I was 15. But I was so stubborn about things, so I wanted to dance, and so eventually she kind of stopped taking me to auditions.
And did you concentrate on dancing?
Yeah, I focused on that. I was dancing like 6 days a week for like 7 hours a day. I mean, that was my thing.
So you were getting disciplined, and then you had stage chops at a young age,
Yeah.
and you had acting chops. Now, how did the Prairie Home Companion come about?
Well, that happened because my mom asked him to do a fundraiser for an orchestra she founded called the Pro Arte Chamber Orchestra of Boston.
And this is Garrison Keillor.
Garrison Keillor, yeah. Sorry, I just said him. So they're from the same hometown, Anoka, Minnesota, and I think she even went to a dance with one of his brothers at one point because one of his brothers was my mom's age. And so she wrote to Garrison and asked him, like, would you, think about doing a fundraiser to help my orchestra? And he responded, and he came out. And when he came out, he also met me, and I was like dancing at the time in the Nutcracker, which my mom also played in. So she was in the pit while I was dancing. And
what's that like? I mean, that's like, when you think about it, that's like not a lot of kids or adults can say that. Like, hey, at one time I was in a show dancing. I mean, that must be a great feeling.
Yeah, it was kind of cool because there were two different areas backstage. Like there was the area where all the musicians were, and then there was the area where all the dancers were. And I would just kind of go back and forth. Like I'd be hanging out with my friends, and then I'd go hang out with my mom, and like it was kind of cool, for a bit. Until I was like, Mom, don't talk to me. I don't want to be seen with you.
I'm a snob.
Yeah,
I don't hang with musicians, and I don't do Zoom.
No
Zoom, no musicians. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. I don't talk to people in the pit. But so he ended up coming and seeing me in the Nutcracker, and then we went out to dinner, and I was very, very shy, but he heard me say like a few words, and I remember him kind of looking at me like, really, that's your voice? Because I had a super high voice at that time. People at my school called me Squeaky because it was like, oh, no. And so then the next day my mom was like, he wants you to do the show. And before I knew it, I was like sharing a dressing room with Allison Janney because she got her start on the show.
What is that like? I mean, it's like, I mean, how old were you?
I was like 10 or 11, yeah.
And now, did you travel with the show, or did you just do it when it came to town, or?
No, I was just a guest on it. That one ended up being sort of a compilation that was nominated for a Grammy, and this particular episode I played as Conscience. So I was like, you need to call your mother, and you need to read Moby Dick. And
so you're Grammy nominated.
Well, like third degree.
But still, though, you were on a project that was Grammy nominated.
Yeah.
And you're 10.
Yeah, I was 10.
So now, what does a 10-year-old Grammy nominee go from there? I mean, because you've already, you're dancing. Now you're still, your main passion is still the dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're getting this stuff thrown at you, well, we got to put her to. So you're getting work, even though you want to dance.
Yeah.
So now, as you're getting, maturing to the teenage years, which direction do you want to go? And do you know that you want to sit there and pursue this for the rest of your life?
Well, it's weird because people used to ask me what I wanted to do, and I almost never said out loud that I want to be an actor, but like I think my whole life that's what I wanted to do. But then I also got sidetracked with cello because I played cello, and so I thought that that's what I wanted to do for a bit. So I went from ballet to cello, and then finally went back to acting. Like I circled back to it, but I sort of stopped doing it for a bit.
Well, that makes. I mean, you're young. Of course, you can change your mind. It's like, you're 10.
Yeah.
Now, what? I mean, so you're playing now. How about in high school? What were you doing in high school?
In high school, I quit ballet cold turkey because I suddenly found out, I can't be the best in the world at this, which, that's heartbreaking to a teenager. You're like, wait, what? I can't be the best. So then I quit, which was kind of an irrational decision because I was pretty good at it, even if I wasn't like the best, I was really good. But yes, I quit that. I joined the track team. I was running, but I also was doing acting. I did like school plays and stuff. And but then I got really serious about cello, and I was like practicing cello like 6 hours a day.
So you're playing cello, you're acting, and you're running track.
Yeah.
Now, how are your grades?
I was terrible at track, by the way.
Okay, but still,
I was bad at.
But still, it's something different. It's like, but were you keeping up your grades?
Oh, no. No.
So your grades stunk.
Oh, yeah.
But you were great at the cello.
I was horrible at school. I've always been terrible at school. My parents, they're both, they met in music school. They're both performers. They're musicians. My dad ended up switching careers to become an accountant, but like still, his whole early life was music. Right. And so it's like my parents are very creative people, and they're sort of the opposite of most parents where like they're not like, oh, do something that makes sense. They're more like, find what you love, just find your passion. And so my whole early life was like looking for what I loved to do, and most of it was performing. Like I loved performing in different ways. But school, I was like horrible in math. Anything that I didn't care about or wasn't interested in, I just couldn't do.
I think that's for most creative people. I think,
Yeah.
it's a matter of we have that feeling like, well, what? Who cares? Like I had got a D in geometry. I was in advanced math classes, and
Oh,
numbers wise, statistics and like this was fine. But when it was like geometry, I'm like,
Like,
who gives a crap about
yeah.
an angle? I mean, he said, I'm not going to use it. And it's always like in Breakfast Club, and he goes, well, that's how engineers or whatever says it. But we
Yeah.
don't think about that because we look at it in a paper. Tell us how to deliver a line. Of course, you
Oh,
can do
yeah.
that. See,
Yeah.
for you, probably look at music, you can read it. But when you look at like a proof in geometry, you're like, who gives a crap?
Yeah, well, people are always like, "Oh my God, how do you do stand up? It's so scary." And I'm like, I can barely go to the grocery store. Like life is hard, but like performing is easy. And I think it is because I've been doing that since I was a kid, whereas like all the other stuff, like there are holes in my learning.
Well, it's
So,
weird. You know Paul F. Tompkins?
yeah,
Well, Paul, because I knew him in
he's
Philly.
brilliant. Yeah.
He didn't get his driver's license until because he was on one of my first shows 5 years ago.
What?
He didn't get it. I don't know what he was in Philly, and he just when he got it, he said it was weird because he's 47, so he was like 40 when he got his driver's license,
Oh my
and it's
God.
like when you're used to not driving,
Yeah.
and then when you're going, it must be weird. Like you've been performing all your life, so that's second nature.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally easy for me to perform, but then like no, yeah, basic normal things, it's like I can't, wrap my brain around it. So,
Now, so you're in high school, your grades stink, but you're acting, you're playing cello, you stink at track. We have that.
also my mother would let me like if I used to so she would perform late at night and I would write notes and put them on my door, like little notes being like, "Mom, I really think it's best if I spend tomorrow practicing my cello since I have a recital on Monday, and I really think that I can use my day more wisely if I spend all day practicing." And then I wish she would let me stay home from school.
Well, see that's cool. It's like I always had to fake the stomach ache. I'd be
Oh,
like,
yeah, I know.
and then my mom would take me to the doctor, and I'd feel bad. But back then, with like the copay, it was like $5. And
Oh,
the doctor
yeah.
knew I was bullshit, but I'm just like,
Of
I was like,
course.
I don't want to. I just want to stay and watch TV, not have to get dressed and go out in the car and go to the doctor. So,
Yeah.
okay, so your grades aren't good,
Yeah.
but you want to go to school after you get out of high school. You want to go to pursue your acting, or because I know you went to Boston University, I believe.
Well, I went to Boston University for music, actually.
Okay, so did you get in on a scholarship or?
I did. So when I graduated high school, I actually auditioned for both music schools and acting schools because I was kind of like, I don't know which one I really want to do. And I remember this moment. I auditioned for Juilliard for the acting program, and I was in the lobby, and this one girl who was auditioning was talking to a girl who was a student who was already attending Juilliard, and they were having this conversation that I was just like in my head I was like, oh my God, I can't be around these people, because with one girl was like, when I came here I just like really found myself, and I just felt like, oh, like now I really know who I am and everything makes sense. And then the girl who was about to audition was like, oh my God, that's what I want, that's so what I want. And I'm just looking at them like, oh my God, are these the people that go here? Like, this is horrible. And then the orchestra got out, and there were a bunch of cellists, and this guy looked at all the like actors about to audition, and he just goes, "To be or not to be," like in a totally sarcastic, funny way. And I was like, those are my people. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I think I like musicians and not actors. Like, I was like, I don't think I want to be around actors my whole life. Like, maybe I'm a musician. So then I got into Boston University with a scholarship for music, and I told the teacher, I was like, look, I'm not going to get in with my grades, so you're going to have to like talk to them. And he did, and I got in, and I did music, but I've never been good at doing like different things at the same time. So it's like I have to focus on one thing like only. And so I think they call that multitasking.
Multitasking. That's
Not
what
good at
it's-
multitasking. So basically I did 1 year, and then I was like, I can't do this. And I was horrible at music theory. I was like failing theory, and they were like, you're gonna lose your scholarship because of that, because I couldn't pass theory.
You know what's so scary? A lot of people learn theory, but so many people I've had on the show, especially a lot of drummers who have gone into very successful careers, are self-taught. They're self-taught, and maybe it's for drumming. Now some of them are self-taught, and then down the road they learn theory. But it's like theory. Once again, it's something that if it depends what you want to do. I mean, if you want
Yeah.
to teach music, I'm sure you want to learn theory. But if you just want to play, it's like it's not as long as you're hitting the chords or hitting the right.
Yeah,
'Cause
well, I had a really good ear, but it was actually like detrimental in some ways because then I was really bad at reading music. So even in an orchestra, I would sit in the back of the orchestra basically like playing air cello because like I couldn't read the notes for like 3 weeks, until it finally like set in. So I just kind of knew like I was like there are just things about music that like the technical stuff in music, I just don't think it's my thing. I loved playing and I was like if I could be good enough to be a soloist, I would love that. But I wasn't good enough to be a soloist, just like I wasn't good enough to be the best dancer.
Right.
And so I think when I went to acting school, which I ended up doing when I moved to New York, I like followed a guy out to New York.
So did you get through music school?
No, I
Okay.
dropped out
So you dropped out, and then when did you decide to go to New York?
the next year.
Okay, so now where'd you meet this guy?
He went to Berklee School of Music, and I went to BU, and we both were ushering at Symphony Hall together.
That's
It was a
sweet.
summer job. Yeah, we were both ushers.
So you meet him, and he goes to New York, and you say, "I'm going there."
Oh yeah, like we were in love, and I would visit him like every other week, and I just fell in love with New York, and I was in love with him, and I hated school, and I was kind of debating. Well, actually, at that time, I was like, I want to go to a conservatory, so I took the year off just to get really good. I took private lessons, and then I auditioned for conservatories, and I got into San Francisco Conservatory, and I went out and visited, and I didn't really like the school that much. And on the way back, I was sitting next to this woman who was in film. She was like a director, and she had dated a composer who had worked on all the Wes Anderson movies, and she was talking all about the entertainment business. And by the end, and we really hit it off. And by the end of the flight, I just asked her point blank, I was like, what should I do, the music or the acting? And she goes, do the acting.
Okay.
It's more fun. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I went to Atlantic Theater Conservatory.
And so you're doing that now. How long of a program is that?
That was 2 years,
No,
two
no.
and a half years.
Were you really into it? Did you love
Oh,
it?
I loved it. As
What-
soon as I got there, I was like, this is my thing. I understand everything, even like the classes that aren't as fun, like speech or things like that, I still enjoy. I loved it. And I loved the technique. It was the David Mamet technique, just like called practical aesthetics.
Where you yell at women?
Yeah, you just swear. Yeah, I had him for one class at one point, and I asked him, he's like, does anyone have any questions? Anyone have questions? I was like, I have a question. He's like, okay, what's the question? I was like, what do you do? Because I was doing like an indie film, and I had to cry, and I've always been horrible at crying on cue. So I was like, what do I do if I have to like cry on cue, like, in a film, and I'm having trouble with it? And he's like, that's a really good question. Everyone, the question. It's my best David Mamet impression. The question is, what do you do if you cry? Okay, the answer is, what do you do if you have to cry? The answer is, you cry.
Well, there you go.
That's it. It's like, oh, okay, got it.
So now you get done to school, and that's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's once again, that's so cool. I mean, the Mamet taught a class. I mean,
Yeah,
the guy's a
just-
prolific playwright. I mean, and movies. He's done
And
movies
he also told me if I didn't fix my voice, I'd never have a career.
because he thought your voice was too high.
Too high, yeah.
So now, how do you go about fixing your voice? Because your voice isn't too high now, but at the time you were in your 20s, 21, 22. So
Yeah.
So you've had that voice your whole age, and it's like, and it probably, I think, if someone says something like to you,
hmm
okay, Erica, here's the deal. You're never gonna have a career unless you fix your voice. Well, I'm guessing for me at least, if someone said that to me, I would always be like, every time I talked, I'd be like, wait a second. What's wrong? What am I doing? Is my voice okay? I mean, how do you fix your
Yeah,
voice?
well, you do. I mean, I did a lot of like work on it in school. Like I did a lot of vocal warm-ups and everything, but at the same time, it's like something you have to keep doing, and also you have to make a conscious effort to be like, I'm gonna lower my voice, forever. And it's like that's not me. Like it's not really didn't feel comfortable to talk from my
Right.
diaphragm.
And it's not natural because you're acting. You have so
Yeah.
much other things you have to deal with that you can't sit there and go, yeah, okay, am I at the right level here?
You do certain warm-ups like ha humma, ha humma, ma 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 ma. ma.
See now, if you talk like that, you'd never have an acting career. They'd be like, who's this crazy little petite girl going? Whoa. They'd be like, get out of here. So now, so you're concentrating now. Now you're out of school,
Mhm.
and now where do you go? Are you
Well,
staying in New York, or
well,
what do you
when
do?
I was in New York, I graduate the school and then I started auditioning. And actually before the school, I got into a children's theater thing, like called Theater Works USA, which is how a lot of people get their equity card in New York. And it's like a children's theater company. And I did Ramona Quimby, and we went on tour, and it was like kind of hardcore. Like we did like 2 shows for every day for like 6 months. We did like 250 shows for, schools and stuff for kids. And I played Beezus, Ramona Quimby's older sister. And so I did that for a really long time, or like 6 months before I went to acting school even. So that was kind of like boot camp in a way. But then I graduated acting school, and the first thing I auditioned for was this horror film called Plague Town. And that was like that ended up being like my first starring role in an indie film like that.
So you got the starring role.
Yeah, there were 2 starring roles, and I got one of them.
And I'm guessing you didn't get the plague.
No.
So you're doing that. So you're acting. I want to talk more about your acting, but
Yeah.
when does the stand-up come in? Because
way later.
Okay, so you're in New York, you're getting and you're working, and that's the thing.
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, but you were in Cavity Town. I mean, not Cavity Town. I just saw Cavity something on your thing, so I was like, what? Plague Town? No, there's something on your Wikipedia page. It says
that's some short film.
It's cavities. Here's what you have. On
Wikipedia is not really accurate.
Because if I looked at it, you went from cavities to you played the Robo Woman on Film Fakers.
Okay, that was a reality show actually.
Okay, so you did you did do a reality show.
By accident. It was a film that they cast actors in, and it was what I thought was my first film, and it was like this crazy sci-fi movie where I played Clicks, a robot, and all this crazy stuff happened on set, like horror, like all these things, like one guy kept getting injured, a girl was sleeping with the director, like all this crazy stuff, and at the end they were like, you're not in this movie called Mukashi Code, you're starring in your own reality TV show.
Well, that must have been. I mean, how do you feel? Because I know Ralph Garman was on a few weeks ago, and he hosted all the Joe Schmoes, and we had talked about the last Joe Schmo that the guy
I auditioned for Joe Schmo.
It's funny because the guy for the last one, the bounty hunter one.
I auditioned for one of those.
But the last one, the guy was just like so nice, and Ralph said he was just so into it that he couldn't be pissed at the end because he won a bunch of cash. But were you sort of pissed when you found out?
I was so upset. I was bawling. They didn't put that on camera, but I was really upset.
Because you probably feel like, what the hell's you jerks?
Yeah, and I was so naive. It's like in other episodes because they had a different cast in each one. They only did it for like 6 episodes or something. It was an AMC show. But like some other actors they had were like real divas, and you were rooting for them to be like, oh, like they deserve that. But I was like just naive and like really like I was nice to everyone on set, and like I made friends with everyone. So I think people really felt bad, like they were like, oh, it's not nice to do that to someone like that, like she, yeah.
you laugh at home, like during Joe Schmo, I would laugh, but then you do sort of feel. For Joe Schmo though, it was only like. It was like the one guy. Everyone else was actors.
We had 3 of us.
Okay, so it's just you feel bad because it's like unless you win cash, then you go, hey, I don't feel that bad because they just got 6 figures.
We got like $1,000, but that wasn't even that wasn't worth it. It was like nothing.
So after Plague Town,
Plague Town.
You're in a movie now. What was it like acting in a movie when you're there? It must have been a great feeling because you're one of the co-stars, so you get the attention and it's you must be a great learning experience.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. It was great. Yeah, I learned a lot, and it was my first film, so it was just a lot of first lessons about being on a film set for a month and being with the cast for a month. And the director is still a really good friend of mine. He even came to my show last night. His name's David Gregory, and he's a great director. And he's the one who convinced me to move to LA.
Okay, so was LA even in your mind? I guess you had broken up with this guy then. That you moved to New York
I had,
for.
yeah.
Because it wouldn't be like, hey, move to LA. Well, no, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Unless he moved to LA.
No.
So you're sitting there, and so now, what was your thoughts when he was telling you to go to LA? Was that in your mind? I mean,
it was already in my mind. Actually, Garrison had a long time before that told me to move to LA, and he had me on the show at Hollywood Bowl one time, and then he showed me all around LA and was kind of like pitching it to me.
How old were you then?
Like 20 maybe.
So you were
21.
You performed at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
How amazing is that? I mean, when you I could just imagine going on and just being from that stage, just knowing the history, it must have been just
Yeah,
sort of intimidating.
it was really cool. Yeah, all the places I've performed with Prairie Home have been amazing.
Where are some of the other places you performed?
Well, I did Hollywood Bowl and Greek Theater, which were both awesome. And then I did Tanglewood, which is out in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. It's a huge outdoor venue. Performed another big outdoor venue in Seattle. And then I've done a few of his cruises. Like I did a Baltic cruise recently, which went to Sweden and Russia and all over the place. So I did stand up on the cruise, which was really fun.
Now, when you do these with the Garrison, the shows, does he just like call you in advance, or do you know what's coming up? Or I mean, how does it happen? And do you have to change your voice now? Because before do you have to go higher now because your voice is lower now, but before you still play as conscience. You still play as conscience, right?
No. That was just a one-time thing.
So,
I always play different people, but he always had me play like very close to myself. He wrote this one kind of skit which was like called Dear Diary, where I would like do like diary entries. So one was like about my relationships, and it was very much autobiographical. He was like, why don't you write something about your relationships? And so I wrote it out, and then he kind of edited it, and then it was like just a monologue of me being like, Dear Diary, today I blah, you know. So it's always kind of based on me or kind of different characters, but nothing that was like too much of a stretch.
So he planted a seed for you to move to LA.
Yeah, but then David was the one who was like, if you want to do film and TV, you have to move here.
So do you pack up your stuff and drive out, or what happens? How do you decide?
Yeah,
and where do you first live? I always like to ask my guests their first place they live.
Yeah, well, first I lived next to a friend of mine who I'd gone to acting school with. Her name was Ileana, and I had a studio apartment right next to her apartment. So it was kind of like a perfect situation because it was sort of like a roommate situation, but not. But we ended up making like a web series together because we both didn't know that many people, and like that was right when web stuff started happening. And so we made this little web series called Apartment 4-5, like based on our apartments, like 4-5, and it was about me always coming over to her apartment, and it was about me being an actress and trying to get her to be an actress, even though she wasn't like nothing like an actress. So I'd come and I'd be like, you either have to be like really skinny or like really, really funny. And then I like look at her and I'm like, you're so funny. And I start like acting like she's so funny because she's not skinny.
But did you guys improv it, or did you actually write it out?
We wrote it out. Yeah, we shot a bunch.
And what area was it?
Mar Vista.
What the hell's that?
I know, it's like where no one lives. Nobody lives there.
What's it even near?
It's near Culver City, kind
of. Okay.
Yeah, it's like
Culver City adjacent.
Yeah, it's between Culver City and Santa Monica.
How'd you end up in Mar Vista? Like all the places to live, and Mar Vista.
She's the only person I knew there, and I had stayed with her when I was visiting, and then the apartment next door just happened to get open, so it was like it just sort of happened like that. And then I lived there, and then I moved a few blocks away from there and still lived in that area, like basically under the 405 in the crappiest apartment I've ever lived in, ever. There was like, we had like a ghost. We were like convinced we had a ghost. And then this is tragic, but my neighbors committed joint suicide.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That would just...
It was horrible. They were this young couple, and they had the car running in their garage for 3 days before they were found.
Doesn't that creep you out?
Yeah.
It's like, for me, the apartment downstairs for me, when I walk down the steps, I used to see this guy, and he'd always be smoking cigarettes. And when I seal him out, he'd be like totally wasted. And then I found out he had health problems. And so I was at the time going back and forth back east a lot to see my girlfriend. And then I was sitting there, and I came back, and I was recording the show in the old studio. And my old roommate goes, dude, there's police tape all around where he used to live. I go, what? And it turns out the guy died and was there for like 2 or 3 days. And what's weird about it was I had a buddy we were hanging out watching something or listening to music, and he said, he had drank a little too much. I said, well, just crash on the couch. So I guess he left at like 6 a.m, and he told me later the door was a little bit open. I guess the guy just got in and passed out, so he closed the door. But it's now I feel weird. It's like when I see new people move into the apartment, I'm like, did they know? Did they have to tell him? Because like,
yeah.
And it's like a guy, and they had to gut the apartment, so it's crazy. So you're sitting there, your people are committing suicide, but you're doing a web series, so that's good.
Well, I'm talking about that was my second apartment.
Okay.
So my first apartment, I was next to my friend, and then I moved.
No more web series then?
Yeah, no more web series. And then I think she moved away. or something. But yeah, so she might have moved. But then I moved in with a friend, and that was like the crappy place. I was paying like $300 a month.
Can't beat that.
But it was like horrible.
Right.
Yeah. It was like I may as well lived in my car. Like
Now were you still getting out and auditioning and acting at the
yeah,
time?
yeah. I was auditioning. I did another web series actually called Upstairs Girls, which got like 250 million views.
Really?
Like, yeah, it's like pretty big, but it's like the biggest thing I've done that no one's heard of, you know? So I did that for like 3 years, and I played a character named Sandy, and so I sort of credited as Sandy, not as Erica Rhodes. So a lot of people couldn't find me after that. You know, like a lot of the fans of the web series didn't really know where I was or what my real name was. So
isn't it crazy with web series that you get so many views and
yeah,
and people don't really know you, and it's like, wait a second, it's like, it's so weird how the industry has changed. I mean, you had 3 years, I mean, 250 million people saw you.
Yeah.
I mean, that must be just a crazy feeling. I mean, and it's just also, what's funny is though, and they don't know that you've done this Garrison Keillor stuff and then all this other stuff and been in Playtown. They don't know that. So now you're doing that. So now when does a stand-up come in?
You're like, please get to the stand-up.
Because I know you acted a lot, because I know you've gotten some TV gigs, and you're with a great management company.
Yeah, finally. I mean, it took me a while to find my management. So I went through like 5 like just, not good managers.
Were they for acting or for stand-up?
For acting.
Okay, so
yeah,
you were getting...
I hadn't even thought about doing stand-up until like 4 years ago.
Okay, so you're getting... What made your old managers bad? Like, would they just not say?
They didn't do anything. They were just, like anyone can be a manager. You can, tomorrow you can be like, I'm a manager, and then you can.
I'm a manager.
Yeah, you could be like, you could get someone and be like, I'm gonna manage you, and they're like, okay, cool. And then actors are like so desperate, they're like, I've got a manager, and then they never hear from the manager, but they don't even drop them because they feel like, well, I want to tell people I have one.
But were you trying to get an agent too?
Yeah, I went through agents too. I just like I didn't have a lot of guidance, so I was kind of like, like Hollywood's weird where it's like there's all the outskirt stuff, so you can't really lost in like the stuff that's like feels like things are happening, like you're doing indie films and like hanging out with people that are promising you things but really have no connections at all, so it's sort of in that cycle.
And it must be hard also because earlier you said that you don't multitask good anyway.
Yeah.
So it is hard because nowadays you have to do a bunch of stuff. You just, unless you're, the next Tarantino, or unless you're going in and just, like the sickest, and even then, if you're like the sickest actor, doesn't mean
still
crap.
not enough.
If you're not good enough looking, sometimes for guys, it's like, oh, he's not handsome. It's like, yeah, like Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti can carry movies. Yeah, but he'll be the supporting character, even though he's a sick actor. They think, well, he's a little short. And it's like, shut up.
Yeah, I mean, acting is just, it's a futile profession. I mean, I don't know how anyone is just an actor anymore.
It doesn't work.
It's like almost impossible. So yeah, I was auditioning and I was really frustrated. And then I found Bruce I wrote to him and I was like, I found Maria Bamford. Someone introduced me to her web series and I loved it. And I thought she was like the funniest person ever and so unique, And so I ended up writing to Bruce. I was looking for a new manager because at that time I was with a manager who's like was mostly horror like oriented. And I was like, I don't think I want to do horror films my whole life.
It really stunts your acting because you think about it. Horror movies are great to watch, but you don't sit there and say, okay, hey, hey, they go, oh, well, she got stabbed.
You're like a scream queen for the rest of your life, and then you can't. That doesn't really age well, Yeah,
because you have to be a certain thing. So now you send Bruce a letter. I mean, that was very. See, that's very cool. Though. That was very. I always tell people you have to be proactive. Else shit doesn't happen.
You
like,
have
people aren't gonna
to.
find. So what do you put in his letter?
So I wrote him an email with the subject line, I'm a young Maria Bamford.
But I could see like you have the same similarity, like a younger. You could play like maybe her daughter, because or like
sister,
younger sister,
maybe. Yeah.
or cousin.
Yeah.
So you put that on that's what you put on your tagline.
Yeah, and he was kind of like, huh? Who does she think she is?
Right. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
You never done stand up and you're Maria Bamford? Hold on, kid.
Exactly.
Maria Bamford's a genius. Okay.
I know. I hadn't even done stand up, and I'm comparing myself to one of the best stand up comedians. But I hadn't even seen her stand up. I just saw her like web series, which he produced, which was so funny. I mean, it's so brilliant. But so it piqued his interest, and then he did look at my stuff, and he saw that I had done Prairie Home, and he saw that I had done Upstairs Girls and stuff like that. And he looked at my reel, and he's like, and he wrote back, and he's like, well, you're not I don't really think you're young Maria Bamford, but you are funny. So let's meet and talk. And so we talked, and we had like a 2-hour meeting, and we talked, and he's like, what's your dream? And I was like, well, I want to be on Saturday Night Live. And he's like, no, that's not going to happen. He's like, get another dream.
Well, that's the thing, though. At least he's honest. You know,
yeah.
Because you sit there, and you're right. So many people blow smoke up your ass, like you're gonna be the next. It's like, well, no. It's like I always laugh when people get their headshot done.
Oh.
And so it's like I used to do marketing for a restaurant. I talked to a lot of the waitresses, and they'd be like, look at this headshot. And you'd be like, okay, this looks
not you.
This looks nothing like you. If I was a casting director and someone said, hey, look at me, and then you walked in, I'd be like, no. It's like me. I'm not going to sit there and go, if I see something on LA Casting for leading man, I'm not a leading man.
Yeah.
Okay. If I see something for creepy, okay, I can do that. But it's the thing. It's like, so at least he was honest with you. And I think as a performer, knowing he was honest and knowing that he's just not some schmuck. He's with Omnipop. He's tried and true and tested, so he knows what he's doing because most of his people do very well. So,
yes.
So that must have been refreshing for you.
It was very refreshing, and he had a reason. He's like, you're not, I don't see anything that you're doing where you do characters. Like, you seem to mostly play something like yourself, which is also what Garrison realized, in Prairie Home. He has other actors who play characters or do accents, and I usually kind of play different versions of myself. And so Bruce was like, stand-up might be something you want to try. And we had this whole conversation about stand-up, and I had actually tried an open mic like a year before that, and it was like a date. It was like a first date with some comic, and I told him I wanted to try it at some point. And then he's like, oh, well, why don't you try it tonight? And so I went and I did an open mic, and I bombed so bad that it kind of like scarred me for life. And I was like, I'm never doing that again.
It's LA open mics.
It didn't matter. But the first time you do it, you're kind of like hoping something good happens, But so it took me another year to try it again. And it was actually just out of desperation because I was auditioning and not getting anything once I signed with Bruce, because he signed me as an actress. And I was auditioning, and I got, some good feedback, but I just wasn't booking anything. And because I've performed my whole life, I was like, I can't, it's like not something I like to do. It's something like I really have to do. Like, it's not, like I have no purpose if I'm not performing, I feel like, in my life. So I just found out, like, I have to do this. So I had a bad audition one day, and I was like, I'm just going to go to an open mic and talk about it. And I just vented about the audition for like 10 minutes. And I had someone in the audience come and play the casting director. I reenacted the whole thing. And then I was so proud that I did it, so I put the video up on Facebook, and I get a call from Bruce, my manager, the next day being like, what are you thinking posting your first stand-up on Facebook? He's like, would you post your first cello lesson? And he's like, you need to take that down immediately. And I was like so embarrassed. I was like sobbing because I was so upset.
But what's great about that is right then it shows that he's hands-on.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows what's right for you. A lot of times, how people be like, well, hey, it got 47 views. At least he's getting crap off there.
No.
I mean, I have early shows that are on a disc somewhere. And the only reason like Paul's show is up is because I knew him and he was a big name. And that was one of my early days. But it's like, I don't think I have Jimmy Pardo who works here. Well, I have Jimmy's episode up, and we were talking that, and I don't even want to look back and listen to that because he was episode 8.
Oh, wow.
And then he was just on a few weeks ago, and he was episode like 475.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, wow, but I was like, looking back, that's why I didn't put a lot of those interviews up because it's when you're first doing it. You don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to show that now when you're like way better now. Yeah. So when I put it up, I was so upset, and I took it down, and then in my head I was kind of like, I'm never doing this again. But because I had put it up, some girl was like, oh, you're doing stand-up now? I have a show next week. Will you do my show? And so I had committed to doing the show, and so I was kind of like, okay, I'll just, I'll do one show and figure that out. And so he and I kind of worked together on, he's like, you can't just get up and talk. Like, that's just therapy. Like, you have to get up and tell jokes. And so he actually, like, really kind of coached me, like he taught me how to write a joke. I never wrote a joke, before that.
Because you never had a need to.
Yeah, I never had to write a joke.
And when you did your stand-up the first time, it was actually like a scene from acting, so it wasn't really stand-up.
Exactly, and it was kind of venting. I was talking about how I had a bad day. It was just sort of, therapy and stuff. But he really had, he knew all the technical side of stand-up because he's been repping stand-ups for so long. So he knows way more than you'd ever, imagine about stand-up. And he's kind of been my coach since then. just kind of working with me. Like I would talk about like a subject and he'd tell me how to make a twist with it. Like, well, you see that coming. And he basically just taught me how to write jokes. And I wrote like 10 minutes in a week. Like I worked really, really hard. I wrote 10 minutes in a week. I did the 10 minutes on the show. It did really well. And from then on I was kind of hooked, and he looked at that video and he's like, this is good. You're on the right track now.
So you did 10, and then now how do you start growing and getting more stage time, and which direction do you want to take it? Because you still want to act, but you want to do stand up, and it's two different worlds.
Well, when I started stand up, I had no idea what I was getting into. It's like one of those things where you're like, well, where ignorance really is bliss. Because if he had told me like, okay, like if you're gonna start this, it's gonna be like really a long haul. Like I would never have, if I knew what I was getting into, I never would have like kept going with it, because I didn't realize what a long road it was. Because I basically did a whole year of bombing. It was basically a year of performing to silence most of the time.
Why do you think you were performing? I mean, no, because you said your first. Well, everyone does. I mean, when you're prepared, a lot of times people do. I mean, it's a consistent fact that you do well the first time. The second time you usually eat it. It's just if you talk to most people. And so how did you sit there? Why do you think you were doing bad? I mean, because you seemed like he's coaching you. You have the stage presence. You have the chops. You've been in front of. You've been on stage at the Hollywood Bowl, so I'm sure nervousness isn't one of your things.
Yeah.
What did you think you were doing wrong, or when did you start?
Well, I think I had a little bit too much of my actor side in it, so it was more like I memorized my jokes and then I would perform my jokes. Like it wasn't like organic. It wasn't in sort of my organic voice. It wasn't coming out natural. It was coming out performance-y. It was coming out like, here is what I prepared.
Okay.
So I think that's what people hate that people react to that as like, like this isn't happening right now. This is a pre-prepared thing that she's rehearsed. Like it felt rehearsed. That's why I think, for a while I wasn't doing so well.
Because I think that happens also. I think a lot of times, I mean, I've worked with acts that, and I used to do it, you sit there like, it sounds like you just improv something, but it's a joke you've been doing forever. And you sit there, and if you talk to someone, you have 18 of them in your head, and they're all crafted bits that they go, hey, I said, what do you, oh, well, and then the people go, oh my God, this guy is brilliant. And you go, no, I just did that first show too.
If you see them multiple times, you're like, oh, he always does that, But
that's the art of stand-up, where you fool the audience.
Exactly. It has to seem like you're just talking, even if they know sort of, okay, this is pre-prepared or pre-written. It just has to feel like it's happening in the moment.
Now, how did you transition from feeling performance-y? And after and if you're not doing well, like that's very hard on someone. It's it's not an easy feeling, because you feel like crap, and then when people walk by, you sit there like the crowd, you're like, oh, and then you sit to the other comments, because LA, there's so many snarky comments. They're like, oh, Omni pop my ass, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the way people are. So I mean, I give you credit for sitting there going dealing, because that's hard to deal with.
Well, I mean, I remember one show like I did at Flappers, and I bombed so bad, it was just silent the whole time, and I got off stage and Bruce was there, and afterwards I was like, maybe like this isn't my thing. Like maybe I should just do the act. Like maybe I was confused, and he goes, it's too soon to tell, because I'd only been doing it for like 6 months or something, and I was expecting to know right away if it was my thing. And he's like, it's too soon to tell. So then I just kind of kept doing it, and I just have moments that went really well, and that kept me in the game.
You started feeling to be more yourself. So
more and more just myself, and I think, and just getting on stage, like I just kept getting up, and even if I failed, I just got up again.
Now, as you're getting better, when do you start feeling more confident? I mean, was it, is it when you sat there, and we all get to a point, where you don't really have the self-doubt, because in the beginning, there's always, I mean, I used to be like, when I get a gig, I'd be like, okay, I hope there's people there. And then you go, if they're there, I hope they like me. Yeah. And then you go, okay, and it's back in the East Coast, where when you were booked, it was, you would be booked, you have to do 20 minutes. There'd be a 3-man show. Then you're like, I only have like 12 minutes, or maybe I have 20 minutes, and because you self-doubt. But then you get to a point where you're like, screw it. If they don't like me, the hell with them. Yeah, because exactly. You're like, fuck them, because this shit works. You do 100 shows. When did you start getting that confidence?
I'm still waiting.
You still,
Just kidding.
no, I know. I mean, sometimes it's weird because you're still a baby in the business.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been doing it 3 years, and like people are shocked at that, but I think it is because I had the performance experience, like stage time from when I was a kid, and also I had guidance from Bruce, especially as to what not to do. He really guided me away from like doing a lot of dirty stuff, like or the easy stuff, and making bad choices, like hacky choices. He really veered me away from stuff I probably would have done for another 3 years until someone else told me not to do
Right.
it. So that saved me a lot of time. But I really think just recently, like I've started to feel more confident on stage, like just very recent, like in the past like couple months.
No, you got to shoot Gotham. That must have been a great feeling.
Oh yeah, that was actually
A year ago.
a little more than a year ago.
So now, did you have to audition for that, or how did that?
No,
whole
that
part-
was on my tape. Omnipop got that for me.
So what's that like? All of a sudden you're doing a TV set, and now did you do it? Was it 7 or 8 minutes, or
It was wait, was it 10?
it might have been 10?
It might have been 10. It might have been a little bit less. But I was a little bit I was nervous, and then it was funny because afterwards Bruce is like he's like, I would have told you not to do this one thing, but you never done it before, so I never knew that you would do this, which is that I was surprised how much they liked me, so I kept thanking them, because I was so in shock that like, oh whoa, like they actually like me. And so you can kind of see my shock in the performance, where it's like I tell a joke and I get a really good reaction and I look kind of shocked, and I'm like, oh thank you because I just wasn't used to doing that well, so.
That's funny. He's like, what are you doing? You're eating up your time.
Yeah.
You only have this many time. And they're laughing hard.
Exactly.
So now, as you're doing stand up, you're still going out and acting though. You're still doing both.
Yeah, I'm still auditioning and stuff. I'm doing bit parts here and there. I did like a tiny part in New Girl. I did a little part in Comedy Bang Bang, and recently I was on Modern Family.
I saw that. Because I see people's Facebook posts.
Uh-huh.
I sit there because it's funny because I became aware of you. You followed me on Twitter once.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how, and it was probably one of those things because you probably didn't know who I was, and because no one does, and you probably sat there and you were looking at like people to follow because I do that, and then I followed you back.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting there, and one time I was on the Omnipop webpage
Website.
because I work with them for a different. And I'm like, who are their other clients? And like the people like Bill Dwyer. And I've gotten them through just talking. Like Jimmy, I got through just hitting him up,
Right.
And then I said, oh, and then I said, well, if she's with Omnipop, she's got chops. Because that's the thing. I mean, that's how, when you look for guests, you go, well, you know what? Because I want to try to infuse some younger guests and some women. Because I swear it's like I get a lot of men. And it's not that I try, but I know women, they can't agree to do a lot of stuff because there's a lot of people who are full of shit, as we talked about earlier. So you sit there and go, you pitch a woman, you send a thing. That's why I said, because Omnipop, I said, okay, I can go through them.
Oh, yeah.
But so no, because I saw your Modern Family. So now that must have been great because it's such a well-written show. I mean,
it's like my favorite comedy probably on.
So what's that like when you get to go to your favorite, and even New Girl, because New Girl, even if it's a small part, New Girl's fun. I've been watching that lately. That show is funny.
Yeah, it was good. Modern Family I was so excited about, but they go so fast that they shot my scene in like an hour, and I arrived on set at 6 and I was done at 9, and I was like, what? Like I wanted to just like hang out the rest of the day. Like I'm like, wait, I have to leave now? I took so long just getting dressed, to leave because I'm like, I don't want to go. This is where I want to be.
Now, was that a big audition process?
It was funny. It was sort of this long process because I met the cast. I met Danny Zucker, who is one of the producers of Modern Family, on a short film because he was friends with one of the producers of that short film, and he saw me do a scene and he thought I was funny, and I sent him my stand-up and he still thought I was funny, thank God. And so then he introduced me to Jeff, at the casting director. I think his name's Jeff Greenberg.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, Jeff Greenberg, who's a casting director. I met with him and had a really great meeting, and then he had me do an audition for another part, and I didn't get that part. It was like for a teacher role, and I think they went a little bit older. And then some like months went by, and I didn't hear anything from them. And then I got a text from Danny being like, I think they're gonna maybe call you in for this other part, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then an hour later, I get an email for the part, and basically what happened is they went through all the casting for this part, and they didn't like any of the girls that they saw, so they had another casting call, and Jeff had remembered me and called me in without even Danny saying anything. And then I went in, and it was like straight to producers with a bunch of other girls, and then it was like just a couple lines, but then Danny told me, he's like, oh, like it's such a long process in the producer session, he's like, you got and lost the part like 12 times during the process. And I'm like, how do they even care that much? Like, it's amazing how much they talk about just a small role like that.
It's because that's why it's such a great show.
I
mean, that's the thing. And so that's cool. So now, are you still getting out and doing a lot of stand-up?
Yeah, every night. I'm producing my own show too. Like, I'm gonna make it once a month. I've been doing it bi-weekly, but it's called a Nightlight Comedy Show. I've been doing that.
Me, I'm telling you, I perform.
Oh, good. Okay.
Actually, I didn't. I used to do it a lot. I hadn't performed for 6 months, and then I put up a picture on Facebook last year from a show I did in my hometown. So when I went back to see my girlfriend, I used to book all the old comedy clubs I played, and I said, I need to start doing stand-up. And then I got a message from Flappers to open for Hal Sparks. So I went up, and I was like, it's fun now. But
That's
so now,
awesome.
so
yeah,
your show.
You should do my show.
No,
it's just
where,
a little show.
Where do you do it at?
It's at Circus of Books.
Okay, now where's that?
It's in Silver Lake. It's actually a gay porn shop.
Now how do you find like you're producing the show? Did you just go and say we should do comedy here?
Well, I was talking to my friend Josh Fadum. I don't know if you know Josh.
I know the name.
He's probably one of my most brilliant friends. He's so funny. And I was telling him I was feeling kind of stuck lately in stand up. I was like, I feel like I'm not getting, performing enough. I feel like kind of stuck and sort of down about it. And he's like, well, why don't you do your own show? And I was like, okay, that's kind of a good idea. And then he knew the guy that my co-producer, he had produced a show with, and my co-producer knew a girl. Everything's always like 5 degrees of separation.
Right.
It's like he knew the girl whose parents own Circus of Books, and they were looking to maybe do some.
Is it really a porno bookstore?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So is it? But today,
very quirky.
Yeah, like what's the crowd like? Like, do people sit there like, that's just funny.
Well, it's Silver Lake, so we get like kind of a hipster vibe, but we also get some stragglers who are kind of sort of strange people. Yeah.
I wish I'd known you years ago, because I used to produce a show at Flappers every other week. It was called Cooper's Angels, and I had all female comics.
Oh, that's
and
great.
I hosted it, and that was like 4 years ago, and I had people, Kathy Ladman, Jan Karam, Jody Miller. And you would have been perfect, because I always.
You should start it again.
It's too much time.
I know, it's a lot. I'm burnt out already, and I've only been doing it 4 shows.
I got to book guests in here. That's it. That takes it. I got to do other things to make myself a living.
Oh yeah.
So now, do you ever go out on the road?
Yeah. I went a bunch of this fall and winter. I went out on the road a lot. So.
Do you do colleges, or do you?
I haven't done a lot of colleges. I've done clubs. I've done Long Island. I'm
Governors.
Governors and Brokerage. I love them. I love performing in Long Island. Like, I feel like they kind of get me in a weird way.
There used to be a place called Thomas McGuire's. It was in Bohemia, New York. It was on an island.
So that's not that.
I think
McGuire's is still one. I think I
McGuire.
performed there.
Okay,
yeah,
because it used to be a guy named
McGuire's, Brokerage, and McGovern's, right? Or maybe.
Well, it was a different guy who booked McGuire's. I remember, but
okay.
that was years ago. So now, do you have a website or no?
Yeah, I have a new one that's gonna be launched in a couple weeks.
And what's it gonna be?
It's gonna be ericarhodescomedy.com.
Okay.
We're working out all the little glitches in it right now.
And you're ERICA.
Yes.
Okay,
ERICARHODES.
Now you tweet. Now what's your Twitter handle there?
At Erica Rhodes.
Now, do you tweet a lot?
Yeah.
Now, what do you tweet when you tweet? Do you tweet jokes, or do you tweet stuff that's going on in your career? Because everyone's different.
I try to tweet jokes. Sometimes I tweet little things that are a little bit more like just kind of moody things, where I'm like, like that sounded kind of just like she's having a bad day sort of tweet, or later I'm like, I should keep it funny,
And you have a Facebook fan page, I believe.
I do. I don't know why people don't seem as engaged, because I have 2 personal pages, so people seem more engaged on those pages.
I did a fan page, and I haven't updated it in a year and a half.
I don't know why.
I just do it on my own, because it's the same stuff. And it's like they're like, well, I don't want to see Erica, and then they sit there and they go, well, I'm friends with her. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
too many things.
I want to thank you for coming on. This was fun.
Thanks. This flew by.
Yeah, well, it's exactly an hour. I don't mess around.
Wow. Well,
But,
you're good at
but
this.
thank you. But it's at Erica Rhodes.
Yes,
and
at
that's,
Erica Rhodes.
It's just so you know, people. It's ERICARHODES.
Yes.
So follow her on Twitter. Check out her Facebook page. Also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Coopertalk. That's at Coopertalk. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. I just posted episode 490.
Wow.
Legendary drummer Kenny Aronoff. You got to listen to that episode. The guy's a rock and roll legend. If you ever heard the song Jack and Diane, the great drum solo, he created that.
Oh,
And
I love
everyone's
that.
played that. So go that. Also, if you go to iTunes or Stitcher, it's all one word, Cooper Talk. You can find me there. Email me, Cooper@coopertalk.net. I'll get back to you, especially if you want to sponsor. I have great rates. I'm played on 11 different internet stations besides Indie 100. So there's a lot of people listening out there to me, and do that. And and so that's good. And then don't forget my other website is stopthesalt.com. Remember when I had that health problem a few years ago? It's the only time I missed recording episodes. I missed doing one day because I was in the hospital. I was in a cardiac unit. So sit there and I changed my lifestyle. I started eating healthy. So go to stopthesalt.com. It's a cookbook. It's 120 recipes. They're very easy to make. They're not confusing. I know a lot of times we get intimidated to cook good. Well, there's no pictures. And this is more for guys because guys don't know how to cook, but it's so easy. There's no pictures. You won't get intimidated. There's no long list of spices. If you don't have cumin, don't worry. There's no recipes with cumin. But get cumin if you learn to cook because cumin's really good. So sit there and go to the website, stopthesalt.com, and buy that book. I've sold a whole 80 of them. So come on, people. If you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. But if you go to stopthesalt.com, I make more money, and I'll even sign up for you, and I'll mail it. I won't put my address because you might follow me. So that's about it. Steve Cooper. I'm only a sip as my guest. Next week, I have some great guests. Don't forget, follow Erica Rhodes, and have a great weekend. Remember, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next week.